The plot has been updated. I am enraged since my brother proposed to my fiancée, his ex, in front of my family. Gavin, my 28-year-old brother, dated my 26-year-old fiancée, Celeste, a year ago. Just so you know, they were dating in August 2022. He ended their brief romance after only 1 month together since he hated being in a relationship and had no interest in settling down. I was in a different state when they were dating, so I had no clue he was seeing someone else, and I didn't know Celeste existed until we actually met. When I moved back in October, Celeste and I met at a pub, and we hit it off immediately. We met up a couple more times before we made it official, and she was without a doubt the most stunning and brilliant lady I had ever encountered. I bring her up to my family in December and suggest that they meet her at Christmas. They were aware that I was seeing someone, but since I'm not very forthcoming with information about my private life, I withheld specifics about my partner until I could gauge the seriousness of our connection. At dinner, my folks began handing my phone around because they wanted to see. Upon seeing it, Gavin lost it, accusing me of being unfaithful for being involved with his ex-girlfriend and demanding that I quit our relationship. I said no. Celeste told me they dated and broke up the specifics when I questioned her about it. After what felt like an eternity, Gavin finally stopped bringing up the fact that I was seeing his ex, and I finally believed he had moved on. This year, on Celeste's birthday, I proposed to her at a romantic dinner for our families and her closest friends. Gavin had another breakdown and got all worked up over it, but my sisters and I quickly put him in his place. The event took place over the weekend. Over the last 2 months, Gavin had remained relatively silent on the matter. I assumed he avoided me because of my aloof demeanor, but I was wrong. Then he asked Celeste and me to a family dinner at his apartment, where my parents and sisters would be joining us. I felt it was strange, but because my sisters and dad were also going, we decided to attend. We adjourned to the living room to continue our conversation after a pleasant, unpretentious supper. After 30 minutes of carrying on as usual, Gavin abruptly jumped up and announced that he had something important to say. After a lengthy speech on how grateful he was to have his family there to celebrate, he dropped to one knee and proposed to Celeste, proposing with this inexpensive ring. Celeste wanted him to put it down and get up since she was perplexed and clearly uneasy. I ran to my dad before he could grasp Gavin, and I hit him. He stated something about how he wanted to prove to me that Celeste wasn't into me and was only trying to get even with him, but I won't repeat it here since I was too mad to listen. My parents took me out of there quickly and said they would speak to him before things got worse. Even though it has been a few days, I am still really angry about it. Right now, I'm at a loss on what to do. This is making me nervous that Celeste may think twice about marrying me. Have you got any tips? Make changes. To start, I want to express my gratitude for taking the time to read and reply. Between last night and this morning, I read the comments, and I must say, some of the arguments raised are quite reasonable. Since that evening, Celeste and my little sister are the only ones I've spoken to, so there isn't much to report. Some things I saw in the comments need further explanation. 1. My fiancée Celeste and I just got engaged. It was the kind of vibe where you could sense that you were committed for the long haul. I am confident in her, no matter how quickly it is. 2. It was actually me who went up to her first when we met. I have no idea if she was aware or suspected that we were connected. She claimed she was unaware that they were dating until I inquired. I didn't have any grounds to question it, but I must own that Gavin's apparent response does cause concern. 3. She was dating Gavin, but I didn't know that when we met. Gavin and I have no kind of relationship. Once close, we gradually drifted apart and stopped exchanging words as we entered adulthood. Aside from holidays like his or my birthday, we didn't communicate much until I returned. Before I felt comfortable enough to introduce Celeste to my family, she had a vague idea of who we were. Upon their meeting, I once again could not detect any lingering emotions on either side. Neither was she cold or distant with him. She just wasn't really friendly. 4. Word on the street was that this was just a 1-month romance. I was under the impression that I could ask her to be my wife without Gavin's consent, but I may be mistaken. By the way, I want to have a conversation with Gavin this weekend in order to clarify everything and get to the bottom of things. It is my own responsibility that I did not inquire about his perspective on their relationship. If something significant or illuminating occurs, I will provide an update. And that's all I got at the moment. Where the original poster has responded, please leave your comments. Resist the urge to listen to the criticisms from his relatives. At least my mom and a couple of aunts are the only ones who have told me about his family drama. They are aware of my character and understand that I will not tolerate his rudeness, particularly towards my fiancée, because our connection is not strong enough. They would be squandering their time. Their fiancé. I really doubt that her return is anything I need to be concerned about. She also finds him repulsive. Haha. Update 1. Please accept my sincere appreciation for taking the time to read this. I apologize for the delay in responding. My weekend was rather hectic. However, I have edited the original post to address the most often asked topics. Thank you once again. Everything, including the criticisms, is appreciated. Update time. I contacted Gavin via phone and invited him to come over to my house for a chat. I informed him that I would also like Celeste to be there during the discussion, but that I would also understand if he preferred not to have her. At approximately noon today, he arrived at my residence, agreeing to speak with both of us. Before I started talking, there was relative silence. I explained that I would like to propose to Celeste and that I was sorry for punching him, but I didn't tell him that. He expressed his gratitude for the apology but claimed it was irrelevant. I asked him to verify whether what Celeste had claimed regarding the romance and split was real, and I relayed her account to him. I wanted to make sure I wasn't misinterpreting their connection or diminishing its seriousness, and I basically indicated that his reaction throughout this whole process has been extraordinary. He said that their relationship was short-lived, lasting only a few weeks, and that he ended it due to his lack of interest. Celeste wanted to know if his behavior was driven by any lingering emotions or regrets over breaking up with her. There were no remorse or sentiments, he said, but he could not deny that she was more beautiful than in their last encounter. He said that he just disliked seeing his ex-girlfriend with his elder brother and that I should not have violated him as a man for continuing to see her. It wasn't like I intentionally did this knowing their past together, I told him, because I had no clue they dated. I should have broken up with him anyhow, he told me, shrugging his shoulders. Even though I have my doubts, he was quite insistent that he would have acted similarly had the tables been turned. If he didn't still feel anything, I wanted to know why he asked her to be his wife. To summarize, he was relating the story to a friend who was there throughout Gavin and Celeste's relationship. The friend suggested that Gavin may have been harboring resentment toward Celeste since she had been fixated on him after their breakup. He proposed to me in the hopes that she would dump me for him since he and his friend felt it would be a fun way to test their theory. Celeste wanted to know more about his suspicion that she was still interested in him after their split, so he said that he had heard rumors that she was inquiring about him and that she was still frequenting the spots they had gone to together, so his supposition seemed reasonable. His suspicions were further confirmed when she appeared out of nowhere with his brother. Celeste assured him that she hadn't avoided certain spots because of their separation, saying that she'd been going there with friends before they started dating and that she'd only inquired about him once after the breakup. She further expressed her offense at the thought that she would stoop to pursuing me in order to get revenge on him, which she told him she found offensive. He offered her an incomplete apology and shrugged, explaining that she needed to understand things from his perspective. When he probed further, she said that she hadn't seen any similarities between us until we were in the same room. After that, the thought never occurred to her. He then gave her the green light. That was essentially the end of the discussion. Before he departed, he did let me know that I could revoke his wedding invitation if I wanted to. He just can't bring himself to accept our relationship after admitting he dated her. I reassured him that he shouldn't be concerned about it as he was probably not invited anyhow. After our conversation, I started to feel better right away. Although my parents aren't thrilled about his not being invited, they acknowledged that it was a joint choice and ultimately beneficial. The fact that I did not want him to be a part of the wedding was understood by my sisters, who assured me that he had no valid excuse for being such an a-hole. I don't think Gavin will contact me soon, and I'm going to cut off any communication with him for the time being. I will provide another update if something noteworthy occurs, and I want to express my gratitude to everyone who has read and commented. Where the original poster has responded, please leave your comments. For what reason was your family unknown to her? We didn't spend much time talking about my family when we first started dating. I chose to leave home in order to escape from them. My parents in particular. But when I returned, my sister begged me to start making amends. And so I did. When Celeste inquired, I was honest about how far I am from them, and she seemed fine with being kept in the dark because of what had happened. Second update. Note to editors. The original poster included both updates in the same post. Just so we're clear, Update 3 would have occurred around 2 weeks after Update 2. The two updates were merged into a single post by him. Probably because a subreddit pulled or put one of his updates in limbo, if I were to speculate. In case anyone is interested in an update, I'm publishing this straight to my profile because I couldn't post it to the same thread. A lot has transpired since my last conversation with Gavin, but I haven't blogged in a while. I haven't had much communication with Gavin since we last spoke. Our sole contact has been within the context of our families. None of us has contacted the other via phone. My mom is now quite unhappy since Gavin is still not invited to my wedding. My younger sister Ivy's 22nd birthday was the starting point for the re-Gavin. After we sat around discussing her ideal wedding, her boyfriend of 4 years proposed at the end of the night. While describing her dream wedding and the details she had in mind for the venue, cake, and attire, she slipped in a comment that went something like, "I know Gavin's banned from your wedding. But you won't care if he comes to mine, right?" I shrugged my shoulders and informed her that no matter how much I wanted to, I couldn't be upset about her guest list. Inquiring as to whether Gavin had not yet received an invitation to my wedding, my mom sent me a strange expression. After I confirmed with her, she became agitated. She informed me that she believed I was kidding when I stated I would exclude him from the wedding since he is family and that I was being unfair. Just for kicks, she said I was harboring a grudge. I brought up the fact that we had already decided he wouldn't be attending. After that, I informed her that we should have focused on Ivy for the day and that Gavin and she might call me at a later time if they wanted to discuss my wedding. My mom forgot about the matter after Ivy scolded her for attempting to center her special day around Gavin. In case you were wondering, Gavin supposedly had to work and couldn't attend Ivy's celebration. My mom wanted to talk about my wedding a few days later, so she dropped by my place. She wanted to know why I was so certain that Gavin wouldn't attend my wedding. She told me I shouldn't be so self-conscious about Gavin's history with Celeste and that cutting off his invitation was excessive. I informed her that Gavin and I had already decided he wouldn't be attending the wedding and that he could always talk to me directly about his concerns. She threatened to skip the party if I didn't re-invite Gavin, claiming that I was isolating her kid, which led to our dispute. I gave her the silent treatment and told her she may throw her invitation in the garbage if that's her preference, but I won't force her to go. She wanted to know if it would be alright with me if she didn't show up, and I informed her that she had missed other events I had hosted due to Gavin. She stormed out because she thought I was being mean for bringing up her faults from the past. She and a few other relatives began to contact me via phone and text about the entire affair, accusing me of being wrong and encouraging me to bring Gavin as a peacemaker. So far as I am aware, Celeste has not responded to my mom's texts in which she begs her to talk to me and persuade me to reconsider. My mom's side of the family is taking a position and won't be going, but my dad's side, consisting of my aunt and uncle and their 2 children, is in agreement with me and will be there. In addition to Celeste's family, my sisters will also be attending the wedding. On top of that, I brought it up in conversation with Gavin and asked him whether he was okay with not receiving an invitation. He claims he should have just declined the invitation and is confused as to why everyone is so worked up about his decision to not go. He informed me that he is not engaged in the conflict and that I should leave him alone, and he also said that he would tell her the same thing. Right now, I'm avoiding my mom like the plague, but my dad and I are still on good terms. I've already informed my dad about this, and he gets it. I haven't decided yet whether to re-invite my mom and her family in case they reconsider the boycott, but I do think the odds are minimal. Since the guest list is much lower, Celeste and I have begun exploring the possibility of decreasing the location. Until further notice, my mom will not be attending the wedding. Update 3. 2 weeks following her decision to skip the wedding, she dropped by to say she needed a chance to speak things out and clear the air. She accepted our invitation to supper, and we were pleased to have her. I asked her if she still hadn't decided to skip the wedding, and Celeste brought her a plate of food. She expressed her desire to, but is unable to, forgive me for making a minor error and not inviting Gavin. I pointed out that his one slip-up was popping the question to my fiancée when we were seated within 3 feet of each other. She insisted it was all in good fun. Since her position on Gavin's attendance at the wedding remained unchanged, Celeste inquired as to her motivation for wanting to speak. Celeste, she hoped, would listen to her and persuade me to invite Gavin again. Therefore, she wanted to speak to Celeste. She obviously thought she could capture her alone because I was at work. Kindly noting that the topic at hand was my brother, Celeste assured her that she could relate to her reasoning but that she would never have broached the subject without me being there. An argument broke out between Celeste, my mom, and myself when my mom said something along the lines of how spineless Celeste is and how she always needs me to think for her in conversations. Eventually, Celeste told my mom to leave. She stood up and began to walk towards the door, with my mom trailing behind, continuing to yell at her. At this moment, she is furiously ranting about how she is isolating our family. My mom snatched Celeste's hair as she was trying to open the front door, and she yelled as she dragged her to the floor. I pulled her away from her and tossed her outside after she struck her and attempted to scratch her face. She departed after pounding on the door for a few minutes. I checked on Celeste to make sure she was alright. Then she phoned us both more times. Once I had confirmed that Celeste was alright, I sent a text message to my mom, telling her not to contact us again because we would never talk to her. Also, I informed my dad and sisters about it when I phoned them. In an effort to explain away his shock, my dad said that she had been worried about this for some time. Since Mom has always been a bipolar disorder sufferer, my sisters claimed they were prepared for her to crack and promised to come check on Celeste. I wanted to know whether Celeste wanted to pursue charges, but she replied no. She just wanted to stop communicating with me permanently. Even though she doesn't want my mom arrested, I urged her she should still report the physical assault to the police. Thankfully, my sisters and Celeste's mom stopped by to console her, so she's alright now. Unless Celeste tells otherwise, my mom is completely barred on everything. Right now, I am completely at a loss on what to do. My sisters and I are trying to get Celeste to go to the police, but she is reluctant since she fears being detained for this. I would like to have paperwork in case something occurs down the road, but she is also worried that she would feel guilty if she does. Where the original poster has responded, please leave your comments. Gavin should have talked to your mom and accepted responsibility so that this whole mess may have been prevented. Though I doubt he understands the meaning of accountability, he certainly has the potential. I truly believe he believes he is innocent of any wrongdoing on his mother's part, and I fear that my words will fall on deaf ears as they attempt to persuade him that she is acting entirely in his self-serving interest. Someone should really pursue charges, the op says in a comment on November 12. Although Celeste remains opposed to filing formal charges, she has consented to have it recorded with the police as a precautionary measure after reading some of your comments and our lengthy discussion about the potential consequences of this situation. She plans to consult with my dad about returning to treatment for her impulsive conduct or finding another option. Furthermore, we will proceed with our plan to go no contact without a doubt. To clarify. First, a little history of my connection to my parents. My mom and the fact that I chose not to tell Celeste the truth about my parents' relationship were topics of conversation among some. Allow me to provide some context for the reasons for our bad relationship. Gavin was the favored offspring, as you all pointed out. My mom didn't do anything to disguise the fact that Gavin was her baby son. Unless absolutely necessary, they avoided spending much time with my sisters and me, but they made sure to spend plenty of time with Gavin. For example, they would take him shopping when we were left with a babysitter, or they would bring home his favorite treats and toys from their own shopping trips. For example, he would often receive brand new, high-priced clothing while the rest of us shopped at thrift stores, or brand new, exclusive toys while the rest of us had to share our old, worn-out ones. My parents made it very clear that Gavin's belongings were strictly off-limits to my sisters and me, but any presents that came our way were meant to be shared. Because I wasn't setting a good example and correcting Gavin when he messed up, I would often face consequences. When Gavin was younger, he had a phase when he would smash his toys, and I would get a good scolding for it. Attempting to shove another student down the stairs landed Gavin in problems with the school when he was 8 years old. For failing to teach my brother the appropriate thing to do, I was ordered to apologize to the child and grounded for 2 weeks. I begged my parents to start letting me have an allowance the year I turned 13. They were willing to let me start saving up for a down payment of around $25 per week in exchange for helping out around the house with things like raking leaves, bringing out the garbage, and mowing the yard. After seeing that I was receiving money, Gavin also pleaded with my parents to give him an allowance. He was never made to labor, but I would give him $10 of my allowance every week as a reward for how well we were doing with our tasks. Whenever I asked him to pitch in, he would insist that it wasn't his responsibility and that he shouldn't have to. I began to emotionally distance myself from my brother about this period. We only spoke when we needed little favors or when we had to, since by the time I got to high school, we had become distant. I wanted to be able to buy a vehicle and have some money that they couldn't take from me, so I started my first job when I was 17 years old. With the assistance of my eldest sister Talia, I opened my own bank account and learned good money management and saving habits. At the age of 18, I finally earned my first automobile. My parents requested that I give Gavin their car so he could move about and practice driving when he got his license. I reluctantly consented, and the arrangement worked well for a time. Gavin did a good job of taking care of my car and using it while I wasn't around. My mother approached me and begged me to give him my automobile when he asked if my parents would purchase him a car. She said he was more in need of a vehicle. She threatened to terminate my lease if I persisted. After that altercation, she took me to transfer ownership of my automobile to Gavin and gave it to him that night. It was the only option available to me, so I signed it over without thinking about it. My mom didn't want to leave Gavin alone for the night, and Gavin didn't want to wait through a long ceremony only to watch me get a piece of paper, so they both skipped my high school graduation. My only allies were my aunt and uncle, who wanted to get me out of here, and my sisters. My parents eventually insisted that they take me home because they had prepared a supper to make amends, but I was unable to partake since my mother had served shrimp and chicken on the same plate, and I have a severe allergy to shellfish. After working 2 jobs my senior year of high school to save enough for a second automobile, I severed ties with them and went away for college the next year. In the beginning, they, mostly my mom, tried to get in touch with me through Ivy and social media, but I ignored them and threatened to shut off Ivy's access if she persisted. After Ivy was unable to reach me, she proceeded to contact me via my elder sister Elise, Talia, and Gavin on many occasions until I threatened to get a restraining order due to her harassment. I bluffed my way through it since I was clueless, but it worked. After that, all I received from her were Happy Christmas SMS. It was about the time I returned that Elise informed me my parents had sought out a family therapist. At her insistence, in an effort to atone for the way they had treated us. The process of reconciliation began when I returned home, and although I was apprehensive at first, I eventually agreed, providing they were sincere. I had to go through a lot before I could even begin to accept them back into my life, and it doesn't even begin to cover everything they did to me. I had no idea how my connection with Celeste or my parents would develop when we first met. I was prepared to lose ties with my family again if necessary, so I refrained from mentioning them. Because Celeste knew it was a sensitive topic, she refrained from asking any further questions. It is my sincere wish that this would address some of the inquiries that have recently surfaced. Where the original poster has responded, please leave your comments. Their reimbursement for the automobile was the deciding factor in why OOP did not have reconciliation. Since the harm was already done, I wasn't willing to die for a little refund for the automobile. Considering Gavin was the favorite, it's hard to imagine even now. Honestly, he wasn't all that revivable. He was just a typical child, and I don't mean that insultingly either. He wasn't a magical cure-all, a magic ticket to a happy marriage, and my parents weren't struggling to conceive. At the moment of his birth, they made the decision to love him more than us. Believe me when I say that they didn't consider this typical. It's simply that they love our parents and thought the best of them. Are you sure you haven't been adopted? A biological person, I am. Even if they wanted to, they couldn't refuse me, unfortunately. In the past, I've tried to justify their choices, but now I just see them for what they are. A couple that should never have had a family. Version 4. As Jan and I have reviewed the comments together, I want to express my gratitude to everyone who has spent time offering me guidance on what to do next, as well as to everyone who has sent me encouraging letters and comments. The most popular question regarding my decision to reconnect following everything is, simply put, because I would go to any lengths for my sisters. As she welcomed her first kid into the world, Elise wished for the support of her extended family. She had little interest in having occasional relatives see her child beyond special occasions like birthdays and holidays. Since she was never one to ask for much as a child, I was delighted to oblige her request when she asked if I would be prepared to give it a go. Somehow, I was hoping that they had evolved. Neither does my attempt at reconciliation. I mean, my parents are still awful, but at least I found my soulmate. Here we go. Because several folks have asked whether there has been any news. I apologize if anything seems unclear or disorganized. A lot has transpired. We contacted the authorities after filing a report, and they informed us that they would consider our wishes on any future action, even if Jan is opposed to it. Pictures of Jan's face and texts between my parents, in which they described the attack, made for very solid proof. In case anything more were to happen, we were instructed to report and document any such events, with my mom taking the lead. I really doubt it will go anywhere given where we live, but at least it's in writing. At least they spoke with her about the event, according to the 100 angry text messages I received. In an attempt to get me to quit my work, my mom yelled at me, accusing me of attempting to destroy her life. She couldn't comprehend what she had done to merit such severe punishment and continued yelling at me, calling me a horrible son for attempting to have her imprisoned over a minor misunderstanding. She begged me to urge the police to disregard the report, but I declined, telling her that she should not have assaulted Jan if she did not want to be in legal trouble. I reiterated to her the officer's statement that it was beyond my control. During her outburst in the parking lot, she struck me lightly on the arm and chest before security came to the rescue and removed her from the premises. I was compelled to discuss the matter with my supervisor. Thankfully, as I described what was occurring, she understood. My story was relayed to Jan the moment I returned home. She wasn't happy about it and wanted us to talk to my family about it next. After a lengthy discussion, we followed the advice of numerous Redditors and chose to cut off all communication with my family members save for my sisters. We have already decided that their presence in my life is causing us both undue stress, and we aren't even married yet. She expressed her desire to create some space between us and my family by considering relocating away. Despite her best efforts, she just can't stand my mom's abusive conduct or the fact that my dad supports her. She claims it's not her place to get involved with my family matters. She was right that they were more bother than they were worth, and I, too, am sick of putting up with them. There was a lot more said, too much for this topic. In addition, I've committed to seeing a therapist, and she's assisting me in doing so. After our conversation, I decided to give my dad a call to inform him that I was going on a no-contact hiatus. The first time I tried calling, he wasn't available, so I left a message requesting a lengthy conversation. He wanted to make sure it was alright to include my mom in the talk when he phoned back. I reassured him that it was fine because she was equally in need of hearing my side of the story. As expected, the discussion progressed smoothly. I informed them that Jan and I are excluding them from our life. My father was quite upset that I would act in such a way after we had worked so hard to mend our relationship. I informed him that my experience with Gavin has proven to me that our relationship is far from healed and that, in their eyes, my younger brother and my mom are the center of the universe. Our relationship has reached a breaking point due to their bias against Gavin, and I made it clear that I had no interest in continuing what was clearly a doomed relationship. I said that I was willing to make amends for Elise's sake, but that I despise the way they've treated Jan and me and that I wouldn't tolerate it any longer if it meant anything to either of us. I vented my frustrations with my mom, telling her that she needed to stop making me pay for her poor parenting and Gavin's terrible behavior. Additionally, I informed her that I would never be able to forgive her for the things she did to Jan, as well as to my sisters and me, when we were little. After she began to bring up the fact that my sisters had moved on, I interrupted her and told her that she should accept their forgiveness and move on instead, especially in light of all she has done recently. I would never offer her my forgiveness. In her anguish, she demanded to know how I could have treated her so badly. I informed her that I had done nothing wrong and that her anger was directed only at herself. As she sobbed more, she told me that she wished she hadn't had me and that I've done nothing except attempt to destroy her life. This sparked another heated argument between her and January. Jan used much stronger language, calling her disgusting and a bunch of other nice names for saying something like that to me. My mom stopped talking after Jan finished speaking to her, so I don't know if she left the room or just decided to shut up. My dad expressed his displeasure with being cut off from my life and urged me to put myself in my mom's shoes. According to him, she was having a hard time taking care of us, and her children were fighting, so it was unreasonable of me to penalize her for that. His final words were that we were family and that I shouldn't let my pride prevent us from putting our differences aside and continuing our journey together. I informed him that she had always cared solely about Gavin and herself and that nothing he could say or do would sway my decision. After telling him it was his decision whether or not to retain my number, I threatened to remove him and my mom from all social media and never contact them again. Later on, I sent an invitation to all of my relatives, with the exception of my aunt and uncle and my sisters, by means of a lengthy email that included a link to my blogs. Jan reassured me that everything would be well as she held me as I sobbed after composing the email. It had been a long time since I'd wept. After receiving the email, my sisters contacted me as well. Elise assured me it was all right and that it wasn't my fault that I had to sever ties with them again after I apologized for our inability to continue mending as she had hoped. Members of my family have had a range of reactions. Some people are upset that I brought up sensitive family matters in a public online forum, while others are outraged that my parents had no idea things had become this bad. Gavin was the final person with whom I discussed everything. He wanted to know if I was ignoring him as well. I assured him I wasn't, but I also wouldn't make an effort to contact him. After he wished me luck with the wedding, he refrained from arguing, and we haven't talked since. My friend Jan and I are currently trying to find a new apartment. Nearer proximity to Jan's brother is the goal. Jan and I enjoy the city he lives in, and he lives approximately 3 hours away from where we are currently. During my conversation with my supervisor on the move, Jan mentioned that she is considering working remotely or maybe seeking for a new job. Our location shifted once again. Mivbul is thinking about letting us use his lake property for our wedding because the guest list is much less. I want to go on with life and not say anything else about this until the wedding or if anything catastrophic happens, but I will do my best to address any questions some of you may have. Best wishes and gratitude over this holiday season. Posting this took several days since I had a wonderful Christmas season. To move details. I will do my best to address any questions or concerns you may have. Where the original poster has responded, please leave your comments. Your mother may also attempt to track your whereabouts. The aftermath of the move is already something I'm looking forward to. Being the type of insane person that she is, she will accompany us wherever we go. She goes into a state of obsession if she isn't satisfied and won't stop until she is. I discussed the possibility of a restraining order with a lawyer friend of mine in order to prevent her from beginning. Your best wishes are appreciated. Happy holidays. Have mom and dad seen the feedback? Ivy says she's read many of them and doesn't think random people on Reddit have the authority to judge her. Haha. I don't believe I have it in me to make any more amends. Sending best wishes their way. Far away from me and my loved ones.